This
keeping up our
conference will
rotation.
now be recorded.
Okay, we will call the meeting to order. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is Monday, April 27th, 2020, 7 o'clock p.m. Would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, did we all get that? Everyone hopefully should have a copy of the agenda. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Noel moves.
Johnson will second it.
Noel 1, Johnson 2. All in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes from our April 13th, 2020 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 6 through 8. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Carrie Johnson, so moves.
Ed will second.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Ed.
Ed. Okay. Carrie Johnson 1, Ed 2. All in favor of the minutes as presented, as written, excuse me, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we will address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? You see anybody, Todd?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Once again, anyone there, Todd?
No, sir. No one has opened up their mic outside of the council members and the staff.
Okay. So we will move on. Next up, we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda, excuse me, begins in detail on page 9 and concludes with the resolution on page 26 and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000 to Irby Utilities for 3 pad mount switch gear elbow cabinets for $47,670. Following license applications, 4 tree worker ones, all for the same date of May 1st to 2020 to April 30th, 2021 to Hack Tree Service, Brooks Stump Removal, Mankato Land Shapes, and Morshing's Tree Service. Next, we have a temporary on-sale liquor license to Nicollet County Ag Society for 400 West Union for June 6, 2020. The following temporary intern appointment to Matthew Warner for a line worker intern for the period of May 18th to August 19th, 2020 at the rate of $14 an hour, plus the regular schedule of disbursements for April 9th, 2020 through April 22nd, 2020. Are there any questions on or comments on the consent agenda? And we will start with Brad.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Ed?
I have none.
Shannon?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Carrie?
No question.
Steve?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
And Emily?
No questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a question on the intern, as I went by it here somewhere, on the intern for his rate. It has an asterisk behind it. Can you explain what that asterisk means? Because I don't see a description or a definition of it anywhere.
I think we have that indicated in there so that it's clear or clearer that this is a temporary position.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if there was anything special other than that. If no one has any questions, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Ruflat will move to approve.
Ed will second it.
Okay, Bruflat 1, Ed Johnson 2. Now any questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which we have none. So we will move to new business, and it's the hospital refunding bond prepayment. And Todd and Sally?
Mr. Mayor, since Shannon is unable to be here tonight, Sally will start with the introduction and provide some of the information, and both Joe and Lori are present from the hospital. If you have any additional questions relative to this bond issue and the plan for this. So Sally, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and council members, this is basically asking us per what we approved back in July of 2018 as part of the hospital expansion, and also included in that with the funding with the USDA is we were going to refinance the 2010A bond for the hospital. And the principal balance right now is at $9,670,000. And what we need to do to refinance is we have to give 35 days in advance of the closing to our bondholder that we are going to refinance this bond and pay it off early. So what we're asking for in the resolution is just your approval that we can give notice to the bondholder of the 2010A bond that we are going to pay it off early, and then it will go into the refinancing that we're doing on the hospital, or the financing we're doing on the hospital with the USDA loan. So that will be over the 35. The total amount of the loan there will be $33,320,000 over 35 years. And the interest rate, Lori said, is now below the 3.5 because of what's going on. We're at about, what'd you say, 2 3/8, Lori, is right now?
Yeah, that's what it was right now. I just got that number from our USDA rep, Doug, on Friday.
So right now we're going in, almost over 1% lower than what we thought. And so that will be good for even with what we're doing with the hospital. So it's good timing for this. So basically we're we're just asking for approval that we can give notice that we're gonna pay off this bond early and then refund it under the USDA loan.
All right. Todd or Joe or Lori, anything to add?
Mr. Mayor, I defer to Lori and Joe if they have anything to add.
I don't believe so.
No.
Okay. I have a question, and then I'll go around for questions. What's the current bond rate, Sally, that we're paying on this?
Oh, I don't have that. It's in my drawer and right behind me.
All right. Well, we'll go around for questions, and maybe you can find that, or otherwise just get it to me later. I was just curious.
I'll get it to you later.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. So we'll
I
go
am
around
confident
for questions.
that we are, Chuck, just to give you a brief answer for the other folks that might be listening in, I'm confident we are at least 1% over the 2.38. And it's variable because these bonds are stretched out for a little bit, so there'll be a little bit different interest rate. So we'll provide the averaged interest rate when we send something to you.
That's absolutely fine. I know that they were definitely doing better, but I just wanted to know how much better. So we'll go around for questions, and this time we're going to start with Ed.
I have no questions, Mayor.
All right. Shannon?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Carrie?
No questions.
Steve?
Todd, by paying this off or taking off the city's books, does that allow the city then to increase its lending, its borrowing capacity for future projects?
Theoretically, that is correct, but from a practical standpoint, we are far under our lending limit. And so while this does increase space, you don't have any plans that you'd bump up against that cap, Councilmember Graham. So while that is true theoretically from a practical standpoint, this doesn't have a substantial impact on us.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's all.
Emily?
Yes, I am wondering about the timing and if the interest rates are continuing to go down just because of the things going on in the country, if we might wait a little longer. Can you speak to that a little bit?
So if I can, let me defer to Lori on that question. We've had a couple of discussions about this, Joe and Lori and I, and so I defer to the hospital team to talk about that just a little bit.
One of the things that happens with the USDA loan is as they're moving to finance these things, it changes quarter by quarter. So when we started this project 2 years ago, it was at 3.5 or 3 3.75. It has dropped recently as they're trying to stimulate the economy. This is abnormal. It didn't change very much at all over the last year until the last month. So waiting any longer, I don't believe it's going to drop below 2. I just don't think it will go that low. We have more of a chance of it going up than we have of it going down.
Mr. Mayor and members, if I could add to that just a little bit, one of the other points that I'd make is that because of, as Lori indicated, the financing or the re-upping of the interest rate is renewed quarterly. We will be right on the cusp of when that change could occur. And I concur with Lori, we are about as low as we're going to go. Now, if we get a strong indication that it will go lower in the next quarter, we have the potential to kind of wiggle a week or two to get into the next quarter because it will be based on substantial completion. And substantial completion is something that's reviewed by the USDA, and they come on site and take a look at and review all the documentation. So there's the opportunity to do that, but we are in very, very good shape.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead. Was that Emily? I'm sorry.
I was going to say thank you and no further questions.
Okay. Brad?
Brad has just left a few seconds ago, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that.
That's okay. But the thing is with the USDA, if we lock it in, and like you say, we're in just on the cusp of that that quarterly deal. If we lock this in at 2.38, it cannot go up on us, but it could potentially go down.
Well, I think that would be true in normal circumstances. I don't think that necessarily applies in this circumstance because we would be at closing with USDA.
Okay, all right.
Not in process, but you are generally right. Once we locked in the application, we could not go above that 3.75 or whatever percentage that was. We could only go down, but since this would be at closing.
Okay, all right.
We locked in at the 3.5, and that's why we can go down. We can't go above 3.5.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. I guess we went around for questions. The resolution for the hospital refunding bond prepayment appears on page 28. Is there a motion for approval?
Steve Graham, so moved, Mr. Mayor.
Noel seconds.
Okay. Graham's 1, Noel 2. Any other questions at this time? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
I believe Brad is still absent.
Okay. Resolution is approved with a 6-0 vote. Next up, we have the 2020 seal coating bid award. Pete?
There's Zeeman City Council. Following the city's purchasing policy, city staff went out and solicited formal bids for seal coating this year. 3 bids were received, and we usually bid about 100 blocks, roughly a little over 52,000 gallons of oil. A little bit about how our process works here for. The contractor in his bid tells us that he's going to deliver the oil. He's going to have the distributor put the oil down. He's going to use rollers on the rock that we provide, and he will use trucks of his own to haul the rock we provide. The city, in turn, will sweep and get the streets cleaned and prepped, load the trucks here at Public Works, supply traffic control, and also supply pickup of the stone. The dollar amount you see here is how we authorize the bidding process. It's for a base bid of 52,182 gallons. We're very happy with the bids that were received. As you can see, they were fairly competitive. This is about 22 to 25% of our annual maintenance program. As you guys remember, we have about $608,000 in our street maintenance program, and this is roughly 22 to 25% of that. If the council should authorize the resolution on page 33, our goal would be to start this process in August, early August, and be done by August 21, and pick up all the rock and materials and be set for fall. There's a map on page 32 that basically identifies that we are going to be south of Broadway and west of Highway 169 in St. Peter. These are older streets, so they do need a little bit of work there, and we will do some pan patching and other repairs prior to doing some of our seal coating. There's a resolution on page 33, and I'm available for questions.
All right. We will go with questions, and we'll start with Shannon.
Thank you very much. The only question I had is sort of a question that applies to all 3 of these bid awards that we'll be voting on. I just noticed that there were at least 1 company bid on each project, and I wondered if you had ever talked about sort of grouping bids so that a company could bid on all 3 projects, if we'd be at some sort of advantage if there were the opportunity for companies to bid on all of them together.
Sure. We probably could do the seal coating and the crack sealing together. They're a little bit different type of work. The seal coating is really an oil dispersing material. Crack sealing is more labor, hands on the street where they're grinding out cracks and applying an oil. But with the asphalt, it's really difficult because to be competitive on the asphalt side, the closer you are to St. Peter, the cheaper the asphalt would be. So it'd be very difficult for like Pearson or Allied or Farner to bid on the asphalt because they'd have to haul it so far, or we would have to go so far to get it. So you probably could on 2, but on the 3rd it'd be pretty difficult.
Mr. Mayor, if I can chime in as well with Pete, if I remember right, and Pete or Barb, please correct me if I'm wrong, we did actually bid these coincident to each other. And so a company could have bid on both and known that they received them. They were bid in tandem. They were not bid as one bid, but they were bid in tandem, if I recall properly.
Okay.
That answers my question. Thanks very much.
All right. Carrie.
Brad is back as well. Wanted to indicate that. And if I can provide one other piece of information, Mayor, members, the map that you see on page 32, and I can scroll back up to, just to be clear, sometimes we have modifications to the rate of application of the materials. And so this is an approximation of the area that will be done. It could be a block or 2 less or a block or 3 more, but this is the area that we are planning to work, and certainly conditions could change slightly in the field as well. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that caveat.
We'll go back to questions then. Carrie?
Yeah, just a clarification, Pete. Could you repeat the timeline? I heard ending in August. When would it start?
This would start the first week or so of August. We give the contractor a little bit of leeway so that if they can go out and get other communities in southern Minnesota, we give them a little bit of leeway, 10 days either side of the 10th of August. But the goal is to be done by August 21. That's when a lot of our help is gone back to college and other areas, so we're pretty short staffed by then.
Thank you, Pete. No further questions, Mr. Mayor.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pete, I have just one. I didn't add up all the projects, the three major ones that are referenced tonight. But are you under budget or right on budget?
Our goal is to be right
on all three of them in aggregate. You know, where do you position yourself?
Yeah, we're in pretty good shape. The bids that came in for the oil and for the crack sealing were lower than we had anticipated. So what we'll do is balance our $608,000 worth of street maintenance program over the course of all the activities we have. And we'll continue to do that right up until the time they come in and do the work. So as Todd had mentioned, we're probably going to put down more of this oil and seal more streets just because the bids were so good.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Like I said, I didn't add them up, so that sounds good. I'm glad you're looking at that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Pete, I got a follow-up then on that, with Steve's. Mine was basically with the price of oil down to what, 12 something a barrel right now. These bids, when did these bids come in?
Just a few weeks ago.
Okay, and it's dropped quite a bit since then. Do they come back and pass on some savings to us at this point, or not necessarily? If they,
no, not unless we rebid it would be the only way we'd get a better price. But as you can see, there's some volatility with business now, because even though oil drops, doesn't mean that the contractor's open for additional work.
No, I understand that, but I was just wondering what the procedure was in such a dramatic decrease in oil. So, okay, thank you. Next we have Emily.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No further questions.
Okay. Brad?
I have no questions either.
And Ed?
I have no questions.
Okay. The 2020 seal coating project bid award, the resolution is on page 33. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make the motion to approve.
Carrie Johnson, second.
Okay, Johnson and Johnson on 1 and 2. And now any more questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
All right.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the 2020 crack sealing project bid award, and Pete again.
Zeman City Council, again, formal bids for the crack sealing portion of our maintenance program. Bids came in very competitive again. We had budgeted about $1.75 per pound of material. We had looked for about 17,000 pounds, so roughly a $30,000 budget is what we had anticipated. Northwest Asphalt Materials of Thief River Falls came in with the low bid. And as you can see, we had some pretty competitive bids along the way. Our goal here would be to start in July. Now, crack sealing is something that we do ahead of on the streets that we're going to do some seal coat work on. And we're going to start in July and finish by July 24th. This is roughly 4% of our total maintenance package. It's a smaller program. We do fluctuate throughout the community, looking at streets that are probably in a little rougher condition, maybe don't drain as well, maybe hold water underneath the streets. And as you can see, a lot of this is collector streets that Todd's showing you on the screen here, and or higher traffic areas that take a little more wear and tear. Our recommendation is to approve the resolution on page 37, and I'm available for questions.
All right, we'll go with questions, and this time we'll start with Carrie.
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pete, relative to this project, you time it so that if there's roads that require both sealing and crack repair, that you do this first before you seal it?
Correct.
Okay, thanks,
That's correct.
Pete. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Pete, I have one question. I just noticed the distance of Thief River Falls, and I wondered, I think the first one mentioned the cost of transporting the material kind of built in. Is it the same for this?
It is.
Okay, okay. Thank you. That was my only question.
All right. Brad?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ed?
Just out of curiosity, Pete, if you do have the information, what did we pay last year?
Crack sealing was about $1.75 per pound.
Oh, so it's down.
Yeah, down a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Just curious.
All right. Shannon?
No questions, thank you.
All right. The resolution for the 2020 crack sealing project bid award appears on page 37. Is there a motion for approval?
Bruflat will move to approve.
Noel seconds.
Okay, Bruflat 1, Noel 2. Any more questions at this time?
This is
Mr. Mayor,
Carrie
if I could-
Johnson. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say, as with the seal coating, the map that you have in your packet and that was on the screen is approximation of the locations. Sometimes the cracks have different depths, and sometimes we can get another block or two, or so it's a block or a few either way. So just want to make sure that you understand that caveat. We go until we have exhausted the 17,000 pounds.
Okay. Carrie, you had a question?
Yeah, so Pete, could you, I just noticed this. So the Traverse Green subdivision, that's a fairly new street system over there. So that needs seal coating at this point? Or I'm sorry, the crack, for the cracks.
Yeah, it'd be crack sealing. You want it to go through a couple of winters after new asphalt like that is laid down, and then you'll be able to see the cracks and seal those up fairly early in the life of that asphalt, and it'll work just fine.
Thank you.
Any more further questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the 2020 asphalt purchase bid award. Pete?
Yes, Mayor Zeman and City Council, we're asking that you approve the 2020 asphalt materials bid to Minnesota Paving and Materials, which is the former SMC pit just a couple miles south of town here. As I kind of mentioned in our other discussions, asphalt is cheaper when it's closer. Pretty much takes the same amount of money to make the wear and the binder. As you can see from the bids, are very competitive. WW Blacktopping has been a great supplier of ours when we have issues with Minnesota Paving, whether they would break down or be using a certain mix that we can't get that day. We can always run over to WW Blacktopping and get some materials. So we're really happy with how the prices came in. As you guys may remember in the past, these numbers have usually been flipped, and what we've done is discuss buying the materials from Minnesota Paving because it is so much cheaper to drive to that plant and pick up the materials. We use half-inch wear on the top of streets. That is a material that's used as the top coating for asphalt. It's a lot of fines in that. It's very durable. You'll see a lot of markings that are out inside the city right now where you can see longer patches that we're going to take out. We'll use a base binder or a wear in there if we do full depth patching. And you can kind of see what we've got for volumes anticipated there. That coincides with the work that we've got planned this year. That is 2 full blocks of replacement on North 3rd and also several areas throughout town, which you can already see if you're driving around. You can see the white marked out areas where we're going to mill and then relay that. This amounts to about 28 to 30% of our normal maintenance program that's out there. There is a resolution on page 39 for your consideration, and I'm available for questions.
All right. Thank you, Pete. We'll start with Steve.
I have no questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Emily?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. Brad?
No questions for me either. Thank you.
All right. Ed?
Nope.
Shannon?
None, thank you.
Carrie?
No questions.
All right. The resolution awarding the bid for the 2020 asphalt materials appears on page 39. Is there a motion for approval?
This
Ed will make a
Steve
motion to
Grams.
approve.
I'll second that, Steve Grams.
Okay, Ed 1, Steve 2. Any other questions at this time?
Mr. Mayor, if I could add, as Pete indicated, although you're approving the bid here, there can be an occasion when we are in the middle of a big project and Minnesota Paving Materials cannot provide the materials on that day or for part of the day. In that instance, we do go to WW Blacktopping. So it's possible that you could see purchasing from both entities, although the vast majority, hopefully 100%, comes from Minnesota Paving. Just want to make that clear. Once we've got holes in the street and all the equipment ready to roll, we can't stop at that point. So sometimes that happens. It's rare, but that does happen.
Okay.
And
All right.
Pete manages according to the overall budget.
Okay. All right. If there are no further other questions, call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Next up, we have a library supervisor position description, and Mr. Schugel.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you. This evening, I'm with you to asking you to approve modifications to position description for our library supervisor position. And as you know, it's our common practice is when we do have an open position to review a job description at that time. And we do have a vacancy with our library supervisor position due to a retirement. This position description was last reviewed in 2017. And in the review process, there are a couple of recommendations for changes. Those 2 changes are in the essential functions area, and those are to provide professional development training for library staff and plan, direct, supervise library acquisitions and collection development. In addition to those 2 in the essential functions area of the job description, there were some modifications in both the minimum and desired qualifications of the job description, and those modifications were recommended due to opening us up maybe to a broader base of both educational and experience as we possibly go for recruitment here. And in looking at this this job description, we think we have an up-to-date position that will be competitive and will be a great leadership directive for our library. So I am with you tonight to answer any questions you may have. In your packet, you'll see the job description in pages 41 and 42. So if you have questions, please let me know.
All right, we'll go around for questions. And this time we will start with Emily.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No questions, just a comment. Just thank you, Joey, for the work you did with this. I'm looking forward to seeing who we get in this position. So thank you.
All right, Brad. Brad?
I have a question on it. I had on the title, library supervisor, I was asking someone about it and whether they had any interest, and while they didn't, they pointed out that a lot of libraries have the title library director. Is there a reason why this one
Yes,
is library
good
supervisor versus library director? Basically.
Yes, good question. So this position is not a library director position. This is a supervisor level position. The way our organization is structured, or our department is director level is with me, and then we have supervisor positions, and this position is really in line with our recreation supervisor position. And so what we do is we mirror this position with our recreation supervisor position. And this is a position that is handling the day-to-day leadership in the library with some director duties within this position. But the overall director of the library falls within my position.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thanks for the explanation. I have no further questions.
All right, Ed?
I have no questions.
Shannon?
I have just one question, which is under the minimum qualifications is listed a bachelor's degree in library media science education or a related field. What would a related field be that you would expect?
This could be a recreation degree. We have a recreation library. That type of position, it could be, our education and library media science really cover a lot of that. And really the one that sticks out to me would be a recreational type degree in working with the public, customer service, and creating programs and opportunities for the public.
Thank you. That answered my question.
All right, Carrie?
I don't really have any questions. We talked a lot about this at the workshop. What stuck out to me in that conversation was that this is a recreational library. There's just tons of programming, and I'm also very interested in whoever is able to fulfill this role as libraries change over the years, and that there's more digital content and more diverse content and more programming. I do have a question actually, but this is just in general related to job descriptions. Todd or Joey, could you explain the pay equity points process at the top of the job description?
Certainly, that's probably actually a fairly long discussion, but I'll try and be concise as I can. Pay equity is a system that municipalities and other local units of government within the state of Minnesota must comply with. It was put in place in the late 1980s. I believe it was 1988 or 1989. In many ways, it is much like comparable worth. However, it specifically identifies gender inequities. And so the decision that was made when the city was required to provide for a pay equity system was the points would be included on job descriptions, and we've maintained that, and it's a reasonable way to do it for sure. No reason to change. And so we are required on a 3-year cycle to report what is considered pay equity. So it is really points versus pay. And so those are identified based on gender of folks that are in those positions in an opportunity to identify gender inequity in pay within the city system.
Yes, and we learned that the finance department reports on that, correct, at the workshop as well?
That's correct. So Sally might be able to tell you what our cycle is, but I believe we are in the second year of that 3-year cycle. But Sally could answer and prove me wrong with that one, but I believe that's where we are.
You're correct. We did it last year. So yeah, so this is year 2 of the 3-year cycle. So December, probably fourth quarter of 2021, we'll be doing it again.
So when we do it in the fourth quarter of 2021, it is the last payroll of that year that is the basis for the comparison. And it's a comparison not with other communities, it is a comparison with within all the job classes and pay equity points within the city of St. Peter.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Todd, we talked about this last week in our workshop, and I still am confused with the answer that you gave me relative to a position that's called a library supervisor. And I don't mean to be adversarial or confrontational, but there's got to be a better explanation than what you gave me, other than you said, I think if I recall correctly, well, it's just because the city administrator wants it that way. And I have worked in supervising people and hiring people for 31 years. And all the position descriptions I've ever written or reviewed, every one that I have seen, all, if they're a supervisor, manager, or director position, all identify the positions that they supervise or report to that individual. So can you give me a better explanation for why the city administrator wants it this way?
I can tell you that this has been the pattern that you have used since your current or prior to the time that your current city administrator was appointed. So it predates me. In many cities, we see it presented in a similar fashion. If it is the pleasure of the council, we can change it here, or we can change it throughout your entire system. But this does match with all of the job descriptions that you have within the city, which indicate what position this position reports to. It does not list who reports to it or who are responsible to the library supervisor in this instance. One of the things that impacts this on occasion is that we do see title changes. We do see modifications to job descriptions on a pretty regular basis. And so, again, we could do this on a system-wide basis, but that's the rationale. Your pattern for the past 25 to 30 years has been this. It is not terribly unusual within city systems for it to be organized in this fashion. A clerk at the library shows a reporting to the library supervisor, wherein this library supervisor shows a reporting to the Director of Recreation and Leisure Services.
I'm just curious, my question is directed towards Carrie Johnson, who happens to be the personnel manager at the co-op. And I'm just curious, if you're writing job descriptions at the co-op, how do you list the director or the manager of the deli or the front end, or however, how do you manage those position descriptions, Carrie?
You know, we always just put who the position reports to, so who their direct supervisor is. Our old job descriptions included, you know, who was under them, who their direct reports were. But we've took that off a couple years ago, and it did go through legal review. So I don't know that it's a legal issue.
Okay, well then, I guess maybe I'm a little bit behind times, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, that's fine. I appreciate your explanation from both of you. And there's no further discussion on my part relative to that. That is all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Steve, I have a comment. You worked for, I think, probably in the state of Minnesota, one of the most bureaucratic endeavors And I think that kind of maybe led up to some of the things that were done there. I'm not positive, but I would think that might be a reason why you had all those years of experience with that. Just an observation.
Well, I had 10 years with corrections, and all the correctional facilities did it that way also. So maybe it's a state issue. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no
I don't.
idea, Mr. Mayor, but
Anyway.
but that's, yeah.
Okay. Thanks for your comments, though. I appreciate that. I think we got through it. Yeah, we went through everybody. The resolution for the library supervisor position description appears on page 43. Is there a motion for approval?
Bruflat will
moved.
approve.
Noel will second.
Emily 1, Shannon 2. Any more questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have and thank you, Joy. I don't know if you're sticking around for this next one or not. The Kids Corner lease renewal. Todd and maybe Joy.
Joey is here to back me up on this one, but this is a request for the council to approve a lease agreement that is retroactive to January 1st of this year. And because their current lease had expired at the end of December in 2019. This lease would take us to the end of the year in 2024. So this includes all of the rooms that they have had previously, and there is a slight modification to the room coverage that is provided for in this resolution. And you'll see it on your screen, and I think you saw it in your packet. The screen highlights what we used to call the parent ECFE room. When the building was originally designed, that's what its utilization was for. But for the past few years, it has been leased by Kids Corner, and it's considered right now room 110. They wish to lease that room through the end of the year and then not lease it starting in the new year in 2021. So to explain that differently, it is the same lease that you have seen before with the exception of a 3% increase in each of the 5 years of the agreement, with the exception of room 110, which would be leased for the remainder or from January 1st to the end of December in 2020, but would not be leased by Kids Corner for the remaining 4 years of the lease. As I mentioned just a few moments ago, the increase per year is 3% on the square footage that they would occupy during each of the years of the agreement. That is the same as you entered into with SPC3. It is the same that you have with your other tenants, which include Minnesota Valley Action Council, Good Samaritan, and the Good Samaritan Society. And so this is consistent with the leases that you have in place currently. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any, but the lease itself starts on, or the resolution starts on page 54.
Okay. We will go around with questions, and we're going to start with Brad.
I don't have any issues with the release. I think it's consistent with what we've done in the past. Todd, will you be putting out an RFP for room 110? Would that be like midway through or like the end of 2020 or 2021, I mean?
Yeah, as we get into the fall of the year, that would be the plan. And my plan would be to come back to the council and ask how you might like it to be treated. In the past, you've done this through an RFP. But frankly, because it is only one room and the square footage is relatively small, there is a reasonable consideration that it provided an opportunity for folks that are still in the building to utilize that space first, rather than seeing an outside engagement with someone. I think that's even more true because of its location, sort of in the middle of the long hallway that really provides support and the rooms for Kids Corner.
Yeah, and the other thing I that did come to mind was whether we might want to just save that as space in the community center for our own activity, going through the process.
That is definitely one of the
Yes.
considerations that Joey and I have discussed so far. Part of our
Back in
process.
2016, that was kind of the room that nobody wanted until the end. Then suddenly,
Yeah, Brad, I would agree with you. I think historically that's, as I recollected it as well. But going back to my previous point, a consideration for utilization by rec staff is certainly one of the things that we could review. And I know that Joey has thought about that. And it really does, at least to some extent, depend on the level of programming. This room, while it would be suitable for a public meeting room, I would hazard to guess that the council might not like to see it utilized as a public meeting room. That would mean that some, like a seed salesman could rent the room for the day, and seed vendors could be walking through the hallway where the daycares were, which is probably not an optimal experience for anyone.
Anything else, Brad?
yeah, I was kind of wondering from a rec programming perspective. I was just thinking from a rec programming perspective as well would be an option. So otherwise,
Okay, I think I heard you're done. Ed?
I have none.
Shannon?
No questions, thank you.
Carrie?
Yes, I'm not as familiar with that side of the building, but Joey, is there card access installed on that door specifically, or is it just on the classroom doors?
I'd have to double check and get back to you for sure. Due to that being not a room that they're housed in all the time. But I would venture to guess that one does not have card access, but I can get back to you with a confident answer tomorrow.
It's not too big of a deal. If it is, I just wondered if that's difficult to uninstall, or if you know that from, I know SP3C just put in their security access doors. What does uninstalling that look like?
Right. All the mechanical work of the doors are still there, so that process would not be a big deal at all.
Carrie, did you have anything else?
No, I think my internet connection is being spotty. Can you hear me okay?
Now I can.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. Steve?
I have no questions, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Emily?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. The resolution approving the execution of the lease with Kids Corner Child Center for space in the community center appears on page 54. And before I ask for a motion, Todd, toward the end, second to the last, what you specified before, is that what you're trying to say, or is that what it is saying for being negotiating through 2024? That this is
Correct.
just a 1 year? Okay, all right. I just wanted a
Correct.
clarification on that.
Room 110 is for 1 year. All the remaining rooms will continue another 4 years after that as well.
Okay, all right. Okay, with that being said, that resolution appears on page 54. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel.
Steve Graham, second. Steve Graham, second.
I heard who was the first? Noel?
The first Noel.
First Noel, okay, and second Grams. Any other questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Baru Flat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thanks now, Joy. I think you're done for the night. Next up, we have the COVID-19 microloan expansion. Russ.
Mayor Zeman, members of the city council, the governor made his executive orders towards the end of March, which resulted in the closing of businesses in St. Peter and throughout Minnesota. And so City Administrator Prafke considered what perhaps the EDA could put forward, and our thoughts immediately turned to 2009 when Highway 169 was ripped up and we had no traffic, and businesses again were left with doing just a meager fraction of their normal level of business. And we found ourselves in that situation. So we wrote some guidelines for the COVID-19 microloan program. You considered those at a special meeting on the 30th of March and did adopt the guidelines. We began advertising the availability of the loan dollars the next day. And I'm very glad to say that we were able to distribute the first loans that following Friday on the 3rd of April. To date, we've distributed 40 loans for a total value of $351,000 and change. The response of the loan recipients has been very positive, very grateful. They were very pleased with the speed and with the applications could get processed and the dollars could get in their hand so that they can keep current with their obligations that their business would have. I've got about 6, maybe 7 loans that are in the pipeline waiting for the proper submittals, or in some cases waiting to get the signature out of state ownership and have the proper documentation. But as the program has been administered, immediately when it was first rolled out, I had an inquiry from one of the local private practice dentists in town, and it was somewhat heartbreaking to explain that at the point in time they were not eligible to participate, although they did have an economic impact because of the governor's shutdown of elective dental procedures and the restrictions placed on them. But you had some hard decisions to make as a city council on how to select the appropriate business sectors for the initial round. And to your credit, you said you would consider expansions of the program if requests were made. And so requests have been made. I'll consider that first inquiry by a local dentist as a request. And then as City Administrator Prafke and Ed Lee from the Chamber of Commerce and I were trying to identify impacts to certain business sectors, birth centers came up. And it's hard to discuss birth centers without being very specific in town since we only have one. But the ownership has reported that they have had a negative economic impact because of COVID. I don't want to get into some of the details of that explanation, but they have requested that they be included in an expanded roster of eligible business resources or business sectors. So the EDA considered an expansion at their regular meeting last Thursday at noon. And the EDA has recommended that you expand the roster of eligible business sectors to include birthing centers and medical offices. Now, medical offices is defined in the zoning ordinance, and I don't know if I can get this far enough away from my eyes to be able to read it, but it says uses providing for the consultation, diagnosis, therapeutic, preventative, and corrective personal treatment services by doctors, dentists, medical and dental laboratories, and similar practitioners of medical and healing arts for humans licensed for such practice by the state of Minnesota. So your dentist, your podiatrist, your perhaps even drug counselors, psychiatrists, those types of affiliated medical professionals that aren't necessarily a hospital would be eligible to participate should you approve the resolution that's been prepared for your consideration on the last 2 pages of the agenda. Again, we have one birth center. As I reviewed the Chamber of Commerce website, their directory for those medical practitioners, I believe I could identify perhaps 8 that would be eligible and of a size where the assistance could be meaningful. For instance, I don't believe Rivers Edge Hospital would be intent to apply for the 10,000, nor Mayo Clinic or some of those others, but there certainly are some local private practitioners that have expressed an interest and I believe could benefit from that assistance to help them keep their doors open to the extent they're possible and to keep their obligations current. Mr. Mayor, I'd answer any questions that you or members of the City Council might have.
All right. Thanks, Russ. We will start with Ed.
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Shannon.
I guess I have a comment and a question. The comment is just thanks to city staff for their quick turnaround of the checks and getting all that paperwork turned around in a timely manner, because I know it's really important for businesses right now. My second question is, did the EDA talk about, on the bottom of page 55, it says, or other similar professions, and then at the top of 56, it says licensed by the state. So I'm hoping that kind of covers us in terms of legitimate type of businesses. We don't have any sort of strange healing through crystals or things like that that is going to get these funds.
Councilwoman Noel, I believe if they're licensed by the state of Minnesota, and I don't know, that might include acupuncturists, some of those other holistic arts, but I don't believe the city or the state would license crystal readers or card readers or things of that nature. So I believe that, you know, the applications that we would process would be truly providing the healing arts and, you know, your traditional medical practitioners.
Super, thank you.
So I have to quit going to my card reader if they can't afford to stay open? Is that what we're saying?
I wouldn't suggest I should read your future, Mayor.
All right. All right, Carrie.
Yes, Russ, I think you answered my question about what initiated the acknowledgement of additional businesses for the EDA to consider. So thank you. I just wanted to make a comment that that this is a program to be proud of, especially as it's been difficult for businesses to access SBA funds and other means. So this quick turnaround time, the work of the staff at the city has been incredible and a great relief and support to our local businesses. So thank you. Thank you for that. And I also think even though the numbers are dwindling on our Friday morning meetings with the chamber and with Greater Mankato Growth through the Retail Alliance and the city, I think just that was a great way to connect businesses and to amplify the programs that are available, including this program. So thank you.
Steve?
Mr. Mayor, I just have one comment. Mr. Pratsky's been known to hit me in the head a few times when we're alone, and then he ends up counting the bumps on my head to see if the message has gone through. So that is not eligible for micro loan, is it, Mr. Mayor?
Well, that would be a work of a phrenologist, if I remember right, and phrenology is quite the science. So, Steve, if we need to do something like that, I can bring a baseball bat, and Todd and I can compare bumps on the heads after that. If you want a second opinion.
Well, thank you. Thank you to you guys. Are really helpful here. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Emily.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo the thanks from the others that this is a really meaningful program. I'm really glad to be a part of making it happen. And yeah, I agree with Carrie. This is something that we should really be proud of. So thank you.
Okay. Brad.
I don't have any comments at this time. Thank you.
All right. The resolution for the COVID-19 microloan expansion appears on pages 57 and 58. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel.
Carrie Johnson, so moves.
Noel will second.
Okay. Carrie Johnson 1, Shannon 2. Any other questions at this time? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. That concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. And I'm first, and the first thing we have is a proclamation for Arbor Month. And I had it on my screen here, so it would be easier to read. There it is. And it says, whereas Minnesota forest treasures were a significant attraction to early settlers because of their usefulness and the beautiful environment they protected. And whereas trees are an increasingly vital resource in Minnesota today, enriching our lives by purifying air and water, helping conserve soil and energy, serving as recreational settings, providing habitat for wildlife of all kinds, and making our cities more livable. And whereas Arbor Day was founded on April 10th, 1872 by J. Sterling Morton at Nebraska City, Nebraska, and whereas in 1876, Minnesota became the 4th state to adopt Arbor Day, and whereas the citizens of St. Peter have proudly participated in the celebration of Arbor Day and Arbor Month for many years, now therefore I, Charles Zeman, Mayor of the City of St. Peter, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim April 2020 as Arbor Month in the city and encourage citizens to participate in planting tree activities at their homes and businesses as the city plants trees in the new dog park, in witness thereof. This generated a question for me, directed at at Pete. Planting trees in the new dog park. I realize we do that. Do we protect them? Because I've seen what dogs can do to trees.
Mayor Tim, I can assure you that we do. We do a little bit of protection in there. Most of those are going to grow up pretty quick, and then there'll be shade trees. But again, as you saw, there's about 7 new trees in there, so we'll do some protection.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That is all I have, Todd. And then if you want to do all of yours at one time, Todd, and then we'll go around for final questions and comments by everyone after you're complete.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. The first one that I have on the list is the COVID-19 impact. As Mayor members may know, about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we sent out a checklist to you. So I'll just very quickly go through that checklist. And if there are questions in certain segments or in certain areas, I'm happy to answer as best I can. We continue to review the Minnesota Department of Health guidelines and follow governor's orders. We've received calls for services and other activities, and I'll illustrate some of those in just a little bit. And certainly we continue to be open to any gaps or needs that you might see. Really frankly, counter to that, if we are doing things in assisting for COVID that you think the city shouldn't be involved in, now is a great time to provide for that idea and have that discussion. We have had community situation assessments with the school district, with Gustavus. I did meet with President Bergman about a week ago, and we talked about the impact on the Gustavus campus and other activities that we are working on cooperatively related to COVID-19, as well as other areas. We continue to participate in the Nicollet County Public Health briefings and share information and work together on a couple of smaller projects that continue to move forward. And we continue to work with the Regional Treatment Center as well. From a city organizational situation assessment, the police department continues to be full staff. We are in very good shape there. No supply chain issues. Operations continue to work well, and the only facilities or equipment issues we have is along with lots of people, and not that this is mission critical at this point, but we are waiting for new computers to arrive, and those have been held up in China and other various places, but they will get here and there. Everything is in good shape. From a fire department, we talked about utilization of masks previously, and there have been changes in the types of, well, let me rephrase that, in the order in which training happens. And so I think that's been done very appropriately by the fire chief and the fire board of officers in trying to recognize social distancing rules. Related to the hospital, I've been attending some of the incident command meetings at the hospital and providing some additional insight a couple times a week, and their executive meetings right now, as reported today at incident command, their PPE seems in good shape, and that they continue to plan for when the next layer of surgeries is able to be provided for. So there is emergency surgeries that are going on currently. There's a mid-level, which frankly, forgive me, the terminology is outside of my head at this moment, but then there's also those surgeries that are chosen by the patient. And so those surgeries get a lot of discussion. We do certainly have a lot of those, but the mid-level surgeries are likely to come online first, and then other surgeries with the knee replacements and things like that. So they're working on a plan for how they can continue to ramp up services once the green light is given. Public Works perspective, Pete's done a great job with his team in modifying and platooning. We talked about platooning last time, changing times for breaks and for lunches. And so the crews there have been very cooperative in this. And so I think that's worked out well. It takes a little bit more planning, but things I think have worked out very well. Supply chain is in good shape. Operations and facilities continue in good shape. Recreation, good, all is well there. We have one person on a planned leave, which has nothing to do with COVID-19. This is probably a great time actually for them to be gone for what they have going on. Supply chain, operations, facilities, our facility continues to be closed to the public, and that's the case with City Hall as well. Building inspection is in good shape. I will tell you that we are in the final throes of the hire process for a new building inspector, and so you can expect at your next council meeting cycle to have a recommendation related to a new building inspector. Operations and supply chain are in good shape, and materials standpoint, no worries there at all. Community development has been busy with loans and the ADA grant information, and so supply chain operations and facilities are in good shape there. Finance, we have some folks that are working here and working from home, and that seems to have worked out very well. Our experiment on the 13th and 14th to allow public entry into the finance department to pay, primarily trying to assist those people that pay with cash, which we still have quite a number of, has worked out okay. If we are still closed to the public as we get to next month, Sally and I have determined that we are likely to follow the same process. Maybe not for 3 days, maybe only for a day or 2 days in the next month. I will tell you that Sally shared some information earlier in the day with me relative to the amount of people. The number of credit card utilization has gone up over 300, and the amount of folks that pay via automatic transfer has grown exponentially as well. So that's great for our customers. It's also great for us. So we're really happy about that, that people are exercising their opportunity to pay via an alternative means. Administration, we're doing just fine. Supply chain is great. Operations, your crews are working really hard. Lots of stuff going on out there. Lots and lots and lots of stuff. And facilities and equipment, we don't have any worries from that perspective. Employees are aware of changes that have occurred in Doctor on Demand and some of the other Blue Cross coverages and things that are either used to be part of your deductible, which are now not part of the deductible, that are paid for as a part of the base insurance. And so we've had continuing and ongoing correspondence with your employee groups about that, as well as other things. As you saw from your packet last time, we are in the process of hiring public works folks, and so their onboarding and drug testing is going on. Recreation will soon follow, with folks being appointed likely in your next cycle. So watch for that, and Joey and his team continue to work through that. From a technology standpoint, our network and systems continue to be strong, and so we're very happy with that. Our remote access has been good. Hardware, we've had a few things going on here and there, but nothing out of the normal, nothing caused as a part of the COVID emergency response. And our meeting support with GoToMeeting, I think, has been very strong and has worked very well. And so we're happy about that. No supply chain issues in the technology department that I'm aware of. I'm not going to talk about transit right now. I will mention it under another report here, but it seems to me that the public meetings using GoToMeetings have worked out fairly well. Certainly, BZA met last week and had what I would consider a marathon BZA meeting for sure, but it seemed to flow reasonably well using GoToMeeting. And so again, we're happy about that. We don't have any significant issues that we see 2 to 4 weeks out coming down, a train coming down the track, so we feel in good shape as we look forward. We are working with the school district on a couple of different things. One other program that I'd like to mention is that we are now doing their backpack nutrition program deliveries on Fridays. That's similar, think about it like Meals on Wheels, but it's for weekend meals for kids that are in school. The school's doing the bus drop off for the weekly meals, as we've talked about, 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch at all the locations. This is a specialized for the couple days on the weekend. So it provides 6 meals per packet per student at the designated locations. So that's worked out very well. We continue to have some discussions with Nicollet County and have a couple meetings coming up with them, not related to COVID, but Department of Health has done a better job in their organizational meetings related to COVID response, and those are primarily hosted and sponsored by Nicollet County Public Health. Just a couple of other items I would mention again is that if members see any gaps or needs within the community that we should fill, happy to hear those tonight and provide some information back if you would like, or if you had any community requests that you'd like to have me cover or address or work through on a future workshop agenda, happy to do that as well. So I'd leave the floor open to the council for a few moments, Mr. Mayor, if they have any of those two issues or questions.
Okay, Todd, why don't you finish everything?
Okay. The next one that I have is recycling site use. We have struggled over the past couple, 2 or 3 weekends with the recycling containers that are located at the corner of Swift and St. Julian at your compost facility. And certainly the county struggled in a similar manner up on Sunrise Drive near their public work facility. So let me be blunt. People are dumping stuff there that doesn't belong there. It's against the law. They should not be doing it. We see mattresses, we see refrigerators, we see lazy boy recliners, we see other things. And over the past 2 or 3 weeks, it's gotten worse. It's a cost to the county, a cost to the city, costs everybody money. So we are working with the county. The county has initiated more of an enforcement program for that. And so as soon as we're ready to go with that, we'll move forward. We really want to encourage people to utilize those facilities appropriately. Those larger dumpsters that are for recycling use are ideal for cardboard. They're great to dump off your cans. They're wonderful to drop off glass jars. They are not supposed to be a place for dumping things that you no longer want, like a piece of a couch or an old grill or a tire. It's not what it's for. So we really want to encourage people to use it appropriately, and frankly, in a pretty pleasant way, I'm trying to scold people who don't. We really want people to get back to using that appropriately. So that's the end that I have, last information that I have on that recycling site use, Mr. Mayor. City county meeting discussion is number 3 on this list. We had a city county meeting about a week ago, a little bit over a week ago, after your last council meeting, and Councilmember Kerry Johnson and Councilmember Grams participate in that. So if they have any comments about that, I would yield the floor to them if they want to provide any commentary about that meeting, which was held on a GoToMeeting platform as well.
Kerry, anything to add?
I'm gonna pass. I'm just gonna pass. There's a lot of background noise.
All right. Steve, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I have to say is that I thought it was kind of a one-way meeting with Todd doing the talking, and there wasn't much feedback from anyone from the county at all.
Okay. All right. Todd, you want to finish up the River MRVT?
I will, Mr. Mayor. The Minnesota River Valley Transit Board met in special meeting on Friday afternoon at 2:30. And based on federal legislation through the CARES Act, which is providing additional funding to states for public transportation, the board took action to make dial-a rides free through the end of August. And so anybody that calls in and wants a dial-a ride in Le Sueur or St. Peter will get that ride for free through that time frame. I do expect that it is very possible and likely that free fares and the funding from the feds through the state of Minnesota Office of Transportation will extend beyond the end of August, but we were taking a very cautious look at this because, as some of you are aware, some of the other programs that the feds put out ran out of money very, very, very quickly. So we're approaching this in a very cautious way, but it's great for your transit riders. I don't know that it will have a significant impact as far as expanding the number of folks that are riding MRVT. It could, but that is really yet to be seen. But just again to mention that MRVT, the Joint Powers Board there, took action on Friday to make dial-a rides free. All other services, contractual services, other types of services were set at half price. And so if you want me to go down a whole list sometime, I'm happy to do that. But the board will be reconsidering all of that prior to the end of the time frame that was established at that meeting, which is August 31st. Mr. Mayor, that's all I have for Minnesota River Valley Transit fare updates.
Okay. Did you have anything else, Todd, before I go around for questions?
No, Mr. Mayor, that's all that I have.
Okay. All right. So we'll go around with questions. If you have questions of Todd of any of the topics he covered, or any questions at all, I guess, in general, and then we will, or anything else to share, and we'll go around one last time, and we'll start with Shannon.
The only thing I wanted to do was put a plug in for the automatic transfer for utilities. We signed up for that years ago. It works well. We have never had a single problem in the whole time we've lived in St. Peter. It's super convenient and a great option to be as low contact with people as you need to be at this time.
Okay, all right. Next up, Carrie.
Yes, Todd, you had talked about the building inspector position. And have you changed your interviewing or hiring practices with social distancing guidelines? How has that changed for you?
So we are doing more pre-interviews and then what I would consider in most instances a final interview using the GoToMeeting platform. So we are not doing those in person. But as far as the type of questions that we ask, as far as the background checks, those type of things all remain very much the same.
So there's no in-person interview, it's through GoToMeeting
At
for
this
the final
time,
interview.
Yep, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Todd, I have one relative to the COVIS issue. Are there any, I'm not really familiar with what the governor's change was. I think it was effective today or if it's effective next Monday. But are there any businesses in town here that have been impacted or chose to do things differently, being that they're starting to slowly open up certain areas of the economy in the state?
Steve, I think your timeline is accurate. I am unaware of any significant changes within the business sector that's occurred based on the last governor's order. There could be something that I'm unaware of, but I'm just unaware of anything else. We do have some businesses that have been open initially, were closed for a while, and now have reopened. So we have a little bit of that's gone on primarily in the hospitality business sector, food sector. But that's really all that I'm aware of. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Well, thanks, Todd. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Emily.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two comment questions. The first, going back to Todd's list from the COVID-19 updates, I want to talk about the hospitals. And I appreciate the update that they're doing well, that they have the adequate PPE that they need right now. This is just kind of a general comment, desire that hearing that I've heard in the news, you know, that there are medical facilities around the country that are, you know, trying to silence their employees for speaking out when there are shortages. And I just want to make it known that I hope that River's Edge doesn't operate in that way. It doesn't sound like they will, but I hope that we can all agree to be transparent and that they will let us know when they have a problem. So that is my first comment. Todd, if you had anything to back me up on that, or.
Well, let me respond. I think, first of all, it just isn't part of our culture to react or act in that way. I will tell you as well that one of the reasons that I do sit in on the meetings out there, at some of the, not all the meetings, but some of the meetings, the COVID incident response meetings, executive team meetings, and certainly the commission meetings, is so that we can continue to be transparent and that communication occurs from the hospital team to the city team and then also through the community. Just a little bit of backing information. One of the reasons generally that we are in good shape relative to PPE is because the elective surgeries that have occurred and have been a substantial part of the workload that occurs at the hospital in the past, certainly those are no longer taking place. We do have some other surgeries and other activities that are going on. As I mentioned earlier, Sunday night to Monday, our census was 6. So there's certainly other activities that require PPE, but the use is dramatically lower because those elective surgeries are not going on. So we started out in COVID in good shape, and not everything is easy to get, but there has certainly been a slight loosening in the marketplace relative to the ability for masks and other things to be produced and then purchased. And we do see throughout the United States, and certainly in our region, a number of companies that have retooled to provide PPE where previously that wasn't part of the manufacturing that they did. And so while not perfect, we are probably, no, let me rephrase that, we are certainly better off than most hospitals within larger metropolitan areas and probably in other rural parts of the United States.
Excellent, thank you, Todd. And my second comment is about noticing gaps. A member of the community has brought to my attention a gap that she noticed on our website, is that there isn't an easy place on our website to find resources. She said she had to do quite a bit of digging, to like going through old council packets or things just to find information, of contact information. If there's a way that we could even link to the county website has a banner that says, I think it says information regarding coronavirus, and it has information or resources available. And I think that having something like that on our website, just to on the front page, that would be an easy go here for all information regarding the coronavirus. That would be helpful to anyone seeking information.
Certainly, let me see what I can do to that. If I could interject, maybe there's also value, and as a part of our process with the hot sheet with Facebook, we've been more directing folks to the Minnesota Department of Health. So if you wouldn't mind if we could do both of those, that would be at least preferred on my part, because that's more consistent with where we've been directing people so far.
That sounds appropriate to me. I think anything just to get the information and have it very visible for people looking for it, I think that would be great.
Certainly, thank you for that suggestion.
I thank you, Todd, and I have no further questions.
Okay, Brad?
So Todd mentioning the credit card payments made me remember an email I forgot to send to Sally this week. I have a question regarding the credit card payments. They're up. You had mentioned last week going away from the system of the client paying a credit card fee and the city just picking it up. When were you looking at implementing that, Sally? And would that be something that would have to go through the city council?
So let me jump in on that one. So we have been able to do it under the authority that you give me temporarily to waive certain types of fees. If we were to do it on a permanent basis, that would be something that would have to go to the city council.
Okay, because I did see it was, if I recall correctly, it was in the tens of thousands that it would cost, at least on an annual basis, if I recall correctly. So would this be basically, so during the COVID-19 state of emergency, they're being waived, but after that, we would look back at going back to the customer paying? Is that the way it would be?
So let me provide a little bit more definition. Generally, that is correct. However, Sally and I have discussed, and it will likely be our recommendation for the long term, that you do waive those fees. One of the challenges that we see is the cost in that. And so as Sally continues to evaluate third-party administrators, we're better able to hone in on what the costs are. And frankly, as we have more people that become accustomed to it, the percent of cost continues to go down. And so this experimental time related to COVID-19 has been helpful, I think, in a lot of ways in us learning what habits are going to take place and also better defining what the costs are going into the future. And lastly, a very important part of the equation is how many folks are likely to use it.
Yeah, and that's why I'd like from an ongoing basis for it to be to definitely be a council decision. Well, yes, the cost may be lower, the cost still could be substantial, and truth be told, we are a monopoly and people have to pay their bill no matter what. I renewed my license tabs online today, and I paid whatever $5 to renew the tabs. So it's just something I think, yeah, we need to have as an ongoing conversation. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, it is definitely a discussion that we envision the council will have, and is certainly something that I cannot do in the long term without your approval. So it does have to come back to you.
Ed, any questions?
I had a couple comments about the recycling sites, but they already realized there's a problem, so.
Sorry, I
right.
stole your thunder there, Ed. I apologize.
I just drove through them yesterday and realized that there was a problem, so.
Yeah, it was worse last weekend, the weekend before, on the recycling, the cardboard container parts. Todd, I have one question, and before we wrap things up, can you explain how we're handling social distancing on the transit system, please?
Yeah, so we have done, let me start with internal and then go to your customers. So from an internal perspective, as we talked about previously, cleaning of the transit buses occurs at the end of every shift. And so each bus generally has 3 to 4 shifts per day. So they are cleaned on a very, very regular basis, and all the surfaces are wiped down. We are experimenting with a barrier. If any of you have been in transit or on transit, if you haven't, I gave you some tokens a while ago. Please feel free to use those. But we are experimenting with a plexiglass barrier, but as customers walk up the steps where the driver is. If you've been on the bus, you probably have a better visualization of that. However, it is a little bit of a challenge for those folks that are using the lift, and they either walk onto the bus, or if they're in a wheelchair, need to be strapped down. That breaks that barrier. I will tell you that with the utilization level that we have, we do not have 3 or 4 or 5 people on the buses today. Our ridership is down. Frankly, a lot of that's driven by there's not that many places to go. You're going to the doctor or the grocery store. No one's going to the hairdresser now. No one's going to visit Mabel down the street. The number of places are pretty restricted, and so our ridership has been down. So keeping people at a safe distance, that social distancing with on the bus, has not been a challenge since the stay-at-home order has occurred. Once the stay-at-home order is lifted, once businesses open, I expect that we'll have more ridership for sure, and we'll bounce back relatively quickly to our previous levels. If social distancing is still an issue then we'll have to address that as it comes forward. We have had some discussions at the operation level about that, but it's been very little discussion. There will certainly have to be more as ridership goes up with the opening of businesses and things.
Yeah, I would think we needed to do something, because if things will open up, but if we run this program through the end of August, some of those buses can be pretty filled up if everybody's wanting to get back out and about. So anyway, with that being said, if anybody else has anything else they would like to add or a question, I'm not going to go around again, but jump in.
Yes, this is Carrie Johnson, and I just had something that Emily said spurred this question. But Todd, at one time, the rec department was considering doing door drops of information. Was that called off? Did that ever happen, or is that still an option in the future if needed?
It certainly is still an option in the future. The decision not to do a door drop was really done from my office, and it's based on the data that I receive in the meetings that I have, not only with Nicollet County, but with other folks within our community. And so we believe that we are hitting all the spots with information. We don't see, I think it's very true. You could knock on 10 doors and 10 people answer the door, and each person might respond and say, well, I didn't know about this, or I didn't know about that. But to keep it relatively small, relatively concise, so that people will actually read it and it not look like a telephone book, we are using alternative means. None of the other groups that we work with, again, Nicollet County Public Health, Nicollet County Human Services, the hospital, the school district, internally for us, have needed or requested a door drop coincident to the activities that we have going on. So it's kind of fallen by the wayside. We continue to be ready and have a plan to be able to do that if the need arises. But right now, it doesn't seem to me, or seem to the partners that we have, that it's something that would be of great value.
And a lot of that information can come through the utility bill sheet, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And so we do have at-home delivery, certainly of those. So people are not reliant only on electronic means to have this information.
Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions or comments before we ask to adjourn? If there are none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Ed will make a motion to adjourn.
Steve Graham, second.
Ed 1, Steve 2, all in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose? We are adjourned. Barb, I will see you in the morning.
Thank
I'll
you,
call-
everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Yep. Barb, I'll see you in the morning.